Up until the year 1900, human knowledge doubled almost every 100 years. After World War II, mankind's knowledge doubled every 25 years. By 1982, when Buckminster Fuller calculated what's called the knowledge curve, it was doubling every 13 months. Now, IBM has taken this up and predicted by next year, 2020, the sum knowledge of mankind will double every 12 hours, twice a day. Are we ready to know this much? Are we ready to realize what we may have learned yesterday is already out of date? Is it possible to know too much? This episode, Knowledge Goes Nuclear. I'm Kevin Frankish. Try to keep up. We are at the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library at the University of Toronto for this episode. There are examples of print here dating back some 4,000 years. It is the perfect place to see the evolution of mankind's knowledge, and the perfect person to talk about it, Professor Kelly Lyons, Associate Dean and Academic in the U of T's Faculty of Information. She studies knowledge and how we can better process it and how we can better share it. I couldn't think of a better place that represents the evolution of mankind's knowledge than here.
This is a place where a lot of knowledge exists.
Let's get right into the Buckminster Fuller knowledge doubling curve. I don't want the name to scare anybody, but he came up with this in 1982. And essentially what he had said was that up until 1900, human knowledge doubled every century, that sum total knowledge of mankind on Earth. By the mid-20th century, it was doubling every 25 years. Then in 1982, when he released this, the average human knowledge was doubling every 2 years. Now, IBM then took that curve and extended it. And I think you did a little bit with IBM as well.
I did. I did not work on the curve at IBM, but I did work at IBM.
And what did they find?
They found that it's doubling every 13 hours or 12 hours.
Okay, that absolutely is mind-blowing. The fact that maybe something we know today, by the end of the day, will be obsolete.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be obsolete, but we'll know something new at the end of the day.
How are we going to be able to process all of this new information and keep up with it?
I think we have to use technology to support that, obviously. That's part of where the knowledge is coming from. We can't keep it all in our head, obviously. We have to extend our knowledge from the world around us. We have to be able to pull knowledge from other places. We have to rely on other people and other people's knowledge, and then technology and tools that support us in interacting with those other people and those other organizations. And we have to manage the knowledge. We need people who have an actual profession in knowledge management. And, you know, shameless plug, we have a program in that in our Faculty of Information, knowledge management.
But think about this. You could be giving a lecture, and from the time you start that lecture until the time you finish that lecture, what you're saying may be outdated.
I don't think I would do a lecture that outdated that quickly. No, of course, and that's why I actually have guest lecturers that come into my class, and students ask, what is the most important thing I have to learn to be a professional in your field? And bar none, everyone says, you have to learn to be able to forget and relearn. You have to learn how to learn, because everything is changing, and it's changing as fast as every 4 to 8 months you're going to be doing something completely new.
And that is where I think, for me, my anxiety bells start going off, is how to keep up. It's tough enough today. I want to, just before we continue, I want to give us a little bit of respect for some knowledge, and thankful so much to PJ here at the Rare Book Library for loaning us the book behind you. So I'm going to grab this camera. We're going to go, let's go on a road trip.
Okay.
Here we go. This is the Caxton Cicero, and it was printed in 1481, like shortly after the printing press was invented. So here, open it up. And a lot of people ask me, why aren't you using gloves? And I'm told that that's okay with books as long as your hands are clean. And your hands are clean.
My hands are very clean.
All right.
Yes.
I think this was when knowledge, I think, right after the printing press was invented, this is where knowledge really started to exponentially grow.
Right, when we could transmit information from one to many, to the many.
To the masses.
That's the big change, a big change. And then with the web, we started being able to communicate many to many. So we have all of these individuals who are creating content and sharing that with all of these other individuals. And now we have machines creating content.
I would argue that I think the printing press was a far more important invention than the internet.
Some would argue that, yes, for sure.
Okay, let's go back to our microphones and get everything back into place. I'm a one-man show.
Yes.
And we're back. Now, I want to talk about maybe something more than the doubling of knowledge. The important thing is going to be the processing of knowledge and processing of knowledge, and also discarding the old. This is an interesting quote. Alvin Toffler, futurist, author of the book Future Shock, suggested that, quote, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn."
Right, exactly what my colleagues have been telling my students, that you have to be able to reinvent yourself. You have to be able to dig into yourself and find new ways of purposing what you know and building on that.
Personally, and this is where we differ. I am so pessimistic about the future. I am so worried that this will be our undoing. I don't think it's going to be global warming. I think it's going to be the overabundance of knowledge and how to process it and use it. But you're more optimistic. You think we can survive this?
I do. I absolutely do. I have the privilege of working with people who are at the forefront of this, and the importance that they're putting on the invention of these new technologies and the impact that they're going to have. I think we have an opportunity to bring all of the right people together in order to do this in a way that will be carry us forward, but not ruin things.
And I think a lot of people, there's an argument about anxiety and depression and that, and I would argue that I think it is more prevalent nowadays, and I think that one main reason for that is the overabundance of knowledge, the way things are changing, and they're not, when I was younger, change came slowly. You get electric windows in a car, and that was the only new thing for a car for the next 5-10 years, and that was change, and that was something you had a chance to get accustomed to. A telephone, you learned how to use a telephone, and you talked back and forth, and really there was only one way to use a telephone until much later. We had a chance to let change happen and to absorb it. We don't have that luxury anymore, and I think it creates anxiety and stress. I'm
sure it does. Change is always stressful, even very positive change. Even if the new feature in that car is actually helping you, making things better, it can be frustrating and anxiety-provoking. And I think we have an obligation to help people learn to manage that change. We can't just assume that people will be able to handle all of that change. We actually have to start understanding how to deliver that information to them to ensure that they have the tools they need to make it through those changes.
I came across a term, a knowledge tsunami. Yes. And at first I didn't understand it until I started reading on it. And it has to deal with not only the change that's coming, but the unlearning that we talked about, the old ideas going out. So when knowledge is doubling exponentially, yet the useful lifespan of that knowledge is decreasing significantly. This is from Mark Rosenberg, by the way. He's a PhD specializing in e-learning. He calls it the result a knowledge tsunami, a seemingly unstoppable wave of new information pushing you forward, combined with an extremely forceful undertow of information that used to be valuable, but is now just knowledge clutter pulling you back. And I think that's interesting. We are being swamped with new knowledge, and underneath we're being pulled back out by the old knowledge.
And it supports your pessimistic view of this abundance of knowledge. Certainly the term tsunami, conjures up very, tragicness. So we have scholars in our faculty who study that very thing. Records management has been studied for years and years and years, and now they're studying what does it mean in today's world when we have to manage not just new records, but figuring out how to help people and organizations manage their way out. We have people that are experts in digital preservation and conservation, making sure that we're preserving the right things and having practices in place that can conserve what we need going forward, but also understanding how to cull, if you will, what's there that is not necessarily needed anymore.
How does that translate then down to, the regular Joe, regular Jill on the street who is having a tough enough time keeping up with everything, all the changes in social media and the world that is coming at them from left, right, and center on social media?
Yeah, it's scary. And I don't think the regular person on the street should be expected to manage this on their own.
They have to, though.
There has to be supports. We have to have policies, and we have to have people studying how to make sure that we are supporting people through these totally disruptive scenarios that are changing everything for people.
And we're finding now, and you and I were joking about Terminator 2, which you watched for me, by the way.
I watched for you, yes.
The rise of the machines. And in order to process information more, in fact, we already have it now, we cannot process information as fast as a computer can process that information. So more and more, not only are we turning things over to the computer, we're turning things over to a computer that's talking to another computer.
Right, and I can see how scary that is, especially against the backdrop of a Terminator 2 scenario. It's really important that we bring the right people together to build these things. So right now we're relying on the people that understand the technology, and it gets pretty exciting the more you can do. Let's make it, learn some more. Let's make it adjust itself when it learns. Let's make it do this. But I actually feel very passionate about multidisciplinary activities and the way that we can bring lawyers in, the way we can bring economists, employment experts in to work with the technologists so that we ensure that we're not building things in a way that will do that to us, but that we're building things in a way that will support the average person on the street, that we're using technology to help them become less anxious about the technology. Am I too optimistic?
Well, I find your optimism, though, comes from a really interesting place, and that is it's the old don't look at something as a weakness, look at it as a challenge, something as an excitement.
Absolutely.
Do you think people will embrace that, though? Do they want to be excited about all this change?
Not everyone. And like you said, change is very anxiety provoking. I think that it's important that people accept that that's going to be anxiety provoking, but also at the same time that the people that are doing this are the right people doing it. So building these things. I want to make sure, diversity is really important to me. I've spent a lot of my career as a woman in computer science trying to ensure and help other young people see the value of this career. And if we don't have the world's population represented in the people building these systems, we won't build them for the world's population. I think that's a challenge.
Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Absolutely.
By extension, those who fail to learn from past knowledge are doomed. So we look at this rare book library here, and we're going to need probably about 1 million more of them to store old knowledge. Is there a fear of getting rid of things? If we had gotten rid of the Caxton Cicero because, it's not really relevant anymore, or some of the medical journals downstairs that come from the Middle Ages, if we got rid of that, we get rid of ourselves. Are we going to be dumping a lot of information maybe that defines who we are?
I certainly hope not. And I think that it's really important. That's why it's really important that we all come together. There are people that study from a critical perspective the histories of technology, the histories of books, and how important that is to our culture and to who we are as human beings. And those individuals also need to be valued tremendously in their research and in the work that they do with the people that are, making decisions about the technology, whether the technology dumps some of this knowledge or not. It can't be done from a technological perspective. It has to be done with people that understand the challenges and the importance of the history.
Okay, so let's try and put people's minds at ease, maybe put my mind at ease right now. This is not happening 3 years from now, 10 years from now. We talk about huge world problems such as global warming where, we're being given warning signs and we hope that something will be done in the next decade. We're talking about something that's actually happening right now, happening tomorrow, happening next week. Do you see something we should be doing to keep that optimistic attitude, to embrace that new, without going, oh my gosh, I can't learn all this stuff?
Yes, of course I do, because I'm optimistic about it. I think there's a lot of things that people can do. There's so many ways to learn now online. You know, the formal model of learning that we grew up with, you and I grew up with, is still available to us, but people now have an opportunity to learn. People need to take advantage of that, to read things that are, so in preparation for this, I watched Terminator 2, and I read some of your doom and gloom stories, and I read the perspectives of people who actually, you know, very respected people who see this very scary future. And I think that's really important, because my optimism has to be couched in some realism. And so I think, you know, the more we can read the other perspective, and that's one of the challenges our social media gives us now, is we're focused on our bubble. What we read reinforces what we already thought, and it's really hard to step outside, excuse me, and make ourselves read something that goes against what we believe. But that's really, if people can do that, it will help.
And you're sort of dipping over into the whole idea of fake news and news that is catered to my beliefs.
Right.
So there's also a danger that knowledge can be skewed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it always has been skewed, but I mean, there's a danger that knowledge could be skewed in such a way that we become so divergent. We become very tribal. Right,
and not only fake, but written by machines, right? A lot of the stuff that we're exposed to is not written by us. I think that the literacy of learning, relearning, and unlearning, the other literacy that people need to have is that ability to vet and to dig and to be critical about what they're reading. Where did it come from? Who else has, you know, where are there other positions being put forward? Teaching people how to do that is really important from a very, very young age.
Well, we've gone about 20 minutes right now,
okay.
So I think we have probably learned more and increased our knowledge,
yes,
maybe not doubled it in the last little while. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Kevin. It's fun.
Next time, lesbian, gay, transgender, transsexual, queer. Now add to the list questioning, intersex, pansexual, two-spirit, and the list goes on. In fact, the more we learn, the longer that list will still get. We need to redefine our common beliefs about sexuality and gender. Adam and Eve, it's complicated. Next, try to keep up.